say, okay, I have a lot of money, but you have no money unless you take profits.
When the first ever spot ETF was created for gold 10x.
And the only thing I really knew was Bitcoin at the time, so I just invested very heavily into that. Rode it all the way up.
What's up?
My name is Jeff. Even the creators have said it's going to be the predecessor of CBDC.
What that taught me was that I need to be self-sufficient.
A solid DCA investment strategy, and pretend the red sell button doesn't even exist.
We about to go up like.
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and degens of all ages. Welcome back to Book Club. I believe this is episode number 4. Today, we're going to be covering The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. This is going to be an extra awesome episode, not just because I think we have possibly the best book that we've had on Book Club so far, but because we have our awesome panel as always. I got my co-host, Nate. How you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm doing right. I'm doing all right. Just got done having myself a little date with the waifu. And then,
very nice.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we got back, and I think, Will, you were like, "Are we doing a show tonight?" We're like, "Oh no," because we only got back like, what was it, 20 minutes ago? So yeah, it's pretty funny. It's actually, what's really funny is we were gonna go see the new Godzilla movie, and we looked at the time and we were like, "Oh, it's gonna, if it's past 2 hours, we ain't making it tonight." So got to put that one on the back burner for now. But hey, I see Willie B. Long is in the chat, and Bungalows for Bachelors. What is up, guys? What is up?
Beautiful. All right. I guess I got to start with you and do our question for the intros for the rest of the panel. What was your favorite part of the book? Nate, what you got?
My favorite part was definitely the story where when he was 7 years old, his father took him out to the yard, which was all brown and wonderful, right? And then he walks him over to his neighbor's yard, and it's nice and green and good looking, and he's like, "Son, you want it to be this color. You can't paint it, but you can figure it out. You need to make our yard look like that." And from there was a whole bunch of things that ended up happening that basically set him up for his entire life to be responsible, to understand how to work things, to be able to ask for help, and yeah, a lot of good stuff in there. So I thought it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great story, and it's one of the first ones that they talk about. It's funny because that's actually the guy's father, and his father is the one that wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I believe that was Steven. It was one of the Coveys, and then his son was the one that actually did the majority of the studying and the writing for this book, I believe. So yeah, it's cool how the torch really passed on between father and son there. It's beautiful to see. All right, we got our second member of the panel. Will, how you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm just driving past probably a wreckage or something right now. There's a whole bunch of cherries and berries, man.
I was going to say, right as I threw it to you, it was just red and blue lighting up your face, and I was like, oh no, is this happening in life?
I'm getting pulled over while streaming, boys and girls. I'm gonna get arrested for driving on the road. No, I don't know. There was a whole bunch of people at that gas station there, just like 5 or 6 squad cars and some like ambulances and fire trucks. So I don't know what happened. Maybe the gas station was about to explode or something. But other than that, I'm doing great. There's no gas stations exploding in my vicinity. But yeah, I'm just driving down to go hang out with the family for the weekend, and my mother and her husband, and then whomsoever else might be chilling at that house. So I'm going to go see them and say, what's up? And yeah, dude, this was a fantastic book. What an excellent, big shout out to RG3 for recommending this book to us, man. He really fucking hit the nail on the head with this one.
Yeah, RG3 was the one that recommended it to us. I think it was when he came on, or no, it was actually when he hosted us on his stream. That was a good one.
Yeah.
That was a good 2-hour chat. We had a blast.
Fuck yeah, man. That was killer.
All right, well, since you liked it so much, what was your favorite part there?
My the thing that stuck out to me the most was when he was describing like the difference between agreements and expectations, you know, like those that's the thing that stuck out to me the most. It wasn't my favorite part of the book, but that's the thing that I can remember right now very specifically, is he was talking about like it's important when you're when you have a personal relationship with someone, and like let's say you're a boss and you have an employee, it's like you can expect them to come to work on time every day, and when they don't, then you're like disappointed or whatever thing. But having an agreement with that person, like, hey buddy, like, or hey friendo, like, do you agree that you should, or like, would you come to an agreement with me that showing up to work like when the work starts is a good idea? Like people respond a lot better to agreements than they do to expectations. So like if you're a boyfriend and you like expect your girlfriend to behave in X, Y, and Z way, but you never like speak about it in the open and come to an agreement about it, then like there's going to be a lot of like underlying like bubbling resentment or distrust or whatever. But like if you just say the things out loud and you both come to an agreement on whatever these like terms of the relationship or the deal or the proposition or whatever is, then things flow a lot smoother. So the bottom line is that agreements are way cooler than expectations and things. So that was my favorite part of the book.
It sounds to me a lot like understanding, actually, because I mean, like, being able to trust someone properly, you have to you state your full intentions of like, this is what I'm trying to do, and then that allows the other person to understand, okay, I get what it is he's trying to do. Am I on board with it or am I not? And that decision can be made right there on the spot. And I mean, there's a whole lot of, it takes the guessing out, you know. So
exactly,
it's the speed of trust.
Yeah, and it's like we live in a world where where we're big boys and big girls, and we can communicate to each other via our words and our actions and our like body language, and there's so many mechanisms of communication. And if you just like if you skip that part and you just like expect things without communicating them, then it's like, okay, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're doing the other person a disservice, and you're doing this like entity that is the relationship between the two of you a disservice as well. So
what's the classic fight? Can't you read my mind?
Yeah, can't you read my mind? It's like, no, dude, like we literally have to be able to. Well, there is so the point of that fight, I think, is ultimately to drive to like, you have to learn how to interpret other people's like the things that they want from like what they reward, you know. So like if I'm interacting with you, Nate, and we have a wonderful business deal, and I'm always bringing you flowers, and you don't give a shit about flowers, like it's incumbent on me to figure out that you don't like flowers by like paying attention to your reaction when I give you said flowers or whatever, you know. If you like money better than flowers, and I give you money, and I see the smile on your face, and you're all happy, then it's like, hey, I did a successful thing, you know. So it's always like. Like good communication is always your fault. Doesn't matter on what side of the thing that you're on. It's always your fault to communicate well to other people and to be able to like to state your intentions well and to understand and to like look through the bullshit and yada yada yada. So I don't want to go on too long. We got one more panelist to introduce here.
That's true. We have our less often seen, but definitely will be heard, and is also a OG member of Book Gang. So we are super happy to have her with us. Mrs. McGettit, how you doing?
Hey guys. So my voice is still a little gone right now, as you can hear. So apologies for that. And give me 1 second here.
No worries. For the people that might not know, she is our producer, makes everything happen behind the scenes here, and we are very thankful for her. And we're also thankful that she hops on book club, because I think she actually has some great insights that the rest of the D-Gens we don't usually come around to, because I'd argue sometimes she might be a little more level-headed than the rest of us, but that's my 2 cents.
Well, thank you. So for me, my favorite part of the book, actually, and he had a bunch of stories that kind of reiterated this idea, but the one that really stood out to me was the one with I want to say it was the makers of Tylenol, and how somebody had gotten into their supply and put in a bunch of, I can't remember what it was, but something lethal, and I think people actually even died from it. And so they had to make a statement about that, and then they completely owned up to it. They paid out tons of money, and then they upgraded their product security. And he was saying that that was a way that people would win trust. And he, like I said, he had a lot of stories like this, but that one is one of the big ones for me. I think that was probably my favorite part of the book.
Yeah, that was a good one for sure. It was definitely an example of how sometimes a business move like that is going to cost you a lot of money and probably put you in the red for a bit. However, at the same time, that's the long-term play. That's saying that we're here to stay, and this is going to build dividends, maybe not in like pure dollars, but it's going to build towards something big in the future.
Yes, I want to elaborate on this point a little bit. I believe it was anthrax, that they put anthrax in Tylenol. Some bad actor got a hold of a bunch of Tylenol, opened the capsules up, put anthrax in, or something like that. It might not be anthrax, but it was Johnson & Johnson was the company. So for the folks at home who don't know the story, basically, like the TLDR version is like the CEO of the company like flew around to all the families of all the people that it was not Johnson & Johnson's fault, obviously, that anthrax was put in their medicine, but they assumed responsibility, and they're like, hey, this is how much this is like how much we care. Like, they didn't assume like culpability, they weren't like the ones who did it, but like they took care of their customers, and that like brought on a huge amount of trust. And the CEO like flew around and visited all the families of all the people that had died from ingesting this like anthrax laced Tylenol. And it was, I don't remember what timetable it happened in, but it was a super crazy event that just like had a crazy positive, as positive an aftermath as one can have when ingesting a bunch of anthrax. But yeah, that was that's the sort of kind of story for the folks at home.
Yeah, there are a lot of cool anecdotes and real life stories in this book. It's absolutely chock full of them. And I think it's a cool thing to see, really show how the concepts in the book do translate into real life. And it does give examples of like how people have used it successfully or not used it successfully. So that's that. All right, panel, do we have any last words before I start rambling and go through the typical book summary before we get to our questions?
Ramble away, brother.
All right. I apologize to the audience. I have lots of notes today, so if I'm not staring into your souls, I'm staring at the notes. All right, here we go. So, the speed of trust. Speed of trust, as RG3 pitched this book to us, was that this is the book that quantifies and mathematically explains how to be trustworthy and what trustful interactions look like. So the way that the book breaks it down is that it has 5 ways of trust, starting at the most central point, which is you, the individual, and then it actually works its way all the way up to society as a whole about what a high trust environment or a low trust environment looks like. One of the fundamental concepts of the book is the idea that if you're operating in a high trust environment, you're going to get dividends out of it. And if you're operating in a low trust environment, you're going to be taxed because everything costs money or time or effort. It's basically this magic trifecta, and trust is the thing that can either reduce that or increase that depending on what you're doing. One of the best examples that he gives is actually the post 9/11 TSA security example, which is that we suddenly went to a very low trust system, which is that TSA is screening everyone and everything, and you can only have 3 fluid ounces of 3 different things in your carry-on. And you can see it right there. It costs taxpayer money, and it costs you time as you go through the airport. So that's the examples. So the first wave of trust is yourself or self-trust. And this is the foundation of the rest of the book right here. He talks about the 4 cores of credibility. The idea is that you need to be trustworthy as a person, and there are 4 ways that you can do it. The 4 cores are integrity, intent, capabilities, and results. The first 2 are more of character traits and kind of like that soft, non-super tangible thing about who you are as a person. And then the last 2 are actually actions that you can take or actions that you have taken in the past. So integrity is basically just being honest, being trustworthy, sticking to your word, that sort of thing. Intent is making sure that people know what you want, what you're trying to do, and that you're not trying to deceive people. Core number 3, capabilities, is it's asking the question, are you relevant? Are you capable in your life and in your field of expertise? It's easy to trust people that have capability because you know they can actually get things done, versus if you try to trust a person with a task that they can't manage, it's like, can't really trust them. And then lastly, results, building a track record. And having a solid track record will build trust because it's the thing that you can point back to and be like, look, I have all these things that I've done in the past. Therefore, it's literally the receipts for I've been trustworthy in the past. Therefore, there's a high probability I'm still trustworthy now and will be in the future. So those are the 4 cores. Everything else in this book builds off of those. The second wave is relationship trust. That's going to be how you start to build trust with other people. And they actually give 13 behaviors about how you can utilize the 4 cores to build trust. So I'm going to run through these real quick and then I believe the first 5 are the first 2 cores, which is more of like character traits. And then the second 5 are actions you can do. And then the last 3 are a mix of the both. So we have talk straight, say what you mean, demonstrate respect, give respect, you'll get it. Create transparency, which is goes along with intent. Right wrongs, which is if you do something bad, obviously try to make amends for it. And then show loyalty. So those are your 5 character ones. Your next 5 are deliver results, basically do your job. Get better, so always be learning and always be trying to improve. Confront reality, which is address the situation on the ground and not lie and blind optimism. Then we have clarify expectations. Again, this kind of calls back to intent a little bit, but it also specifies what you're capable of doing. Then we have practice accountability. This is taking things upon yourself. And then the last 3, we have listen first, keep commitments, and extend trust. So I know that might be a lot, but those are honestly the first 2 levels of the book, and they are the vast majority of the book, and everything will build off of them. And at the center of it all are the 4 cores. So then after that, we get to in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th waves of the book, which is organizational trust. So like inside of a company, inside of a workplace, you can identify high trust and low trust environments. And like how many signatures do you need to get to be able to go buy pens for your workspace? Like that's a good question for this one. Next one, we have market trust, which is going back to some of the examples that the panel already gave, which is the idea of like Tylenol, where there is an issue with your product and you are actually extending trust to your consumer base and in turn hoping that they extend trust to you. And then lastly, we have societal trust. The societal trust is an interesting one because I think there's a great quote that comes from it, which is that trust to people is like water is to a fish. You aren't going to realize it's there until it's all gone, which is that you're not really going to think about these things until you absolutely need it, and it is definitely not there. This is more of like kind of breakdown of society things. This is where we start to see somewhat in the modern age where even with cryptocurrency, we are trying to work on decentralized finance, DeFi. That's our favorite thing. We're trying to build trustless systems because there's a fundamental level of trust that has started to evaporate from the financial institutions in some people's opinions. So there we go. Those are our 5 waves of trust, and that is the vast majority of the book. There are a few extra chapters on extending smart trust, how to rebuild trust, and then the idea of always be the first to extend trust where you can, because it's going to pay dividends in the future. So with that said, that is our summary. I will now go to our questions, take a break, and take a drink. So panel, which of, I guess panel first, do you guys remember reading through the audiobook? Did you take the self-assessment on how trustworthy you are as a person?
I did not do a thorough one, but I definitely listened to all the questions and I was like, okay, I'm pretty good at that. I might need to work there, yada, yada. So I didn't like have a quantified score, but I listened during each of the questions and I paid attention to the stuff and I was like, oh, okay, do a little bit of self-analysis there.
I hear you. Yeah, so just for reference, what I'm talking about, folks at home, in chapter 4, under the section of self-trust, there's actually a self-assessment that you can take that will grade yourself on the 4 cores. Each of the categories has a max possible of 25 points. You answer the questions as honestly as you can, and then it'll give you a score for each of the cores. I took it myself. I ended up with a 77, and my lowest categories were capabilities and results. And honestly, I think one of the reasons that I can attribute that to is just the fact that I'm a young guy. I'm only 29. Granted, I feel like I've done a good bit in my life already, but at the same time, I understand that with youth comes inexperience and a lack of results. So I can tell you right now, as I move forward in my life, I'm still definitely trying to build up that resume and build up that list of wins that I can point back to. So
yeah, actually, I kind of
4 cores.
I ended up scoring right around kind of the same area, kind of like higher 70s. Now I didn't get very specifically into it, right? Because I was I was literally doing it in my head while I was listening to it at work.
Yeah.
But I ended up kind of getting a kind of a range of where I was at, and it's right around the upper 70s, maybe lower 80s. And the only thing that I could think of that was scoring me low was my own trust for other people. I've been hurt hurt so many times in my life from trying to trust people that at this point it's an automatic response for me to just say, yeah, there's something else going on here. When's the other shoe gonna drop? That's the term that I came up with.
Fair enough. That totally works. What do you guys think about the four cores? It's divided into that half and half of like who you are as a person versus like what you actually do. What do you guys think about that split between them?
Can you read off the four cores specifically again to refresh my memory? Because I remember the last one's results.
You're for
that
sure.
one was my favorite.
So the first two categorized as character traits, we have integrity and intent. And then the second two, we have competence and results, which is basically your ability to do things and what have you done.
Integrity, intent, competence, results.
So I'll throw it this way. When you traditionally think of what it means to be trustworthy, does your mind immediately jump to how capable a person is?
It's not my go-to response, but that does play like a huge part, like military background, right? There's times where you need to rely on people around you to do things competently in order for you to stay alive. And I mean, that definitely happens a lot in the civilian world too. It's just like things you don't really take it for granted, like that the pilot knows how to fly the plane, that the bus driver is not feeling bad on that particular day and going to run into a building. That as you're crossing the street, that all these other cars are not going to hit you. Like your question was about competence, right? And how that's not something that normally one would think to play into trust.
So allow me to reform this question a bit. When you think of trust before you read this book, which of these kind of areas did you naturally gravitate more towards initially?
I think that results and intent, but probably, what was the first one again?
Yeah, integrity.
Integrity. Okay, yeah. So integrity that's an obvious one.
Yeah.
But integrity, I guess I didn't really I don't think a whole lot about intent when I think of trust. I personally don't think that intent matters as much, and I'll probably have to revisit that thesis of mine because I'm going to read through this book again to pay a little bit more attention to that spot in particular, because that's something that I sort of kind of disagree with. I don't necessarily think that intent matters. I think that results matter more than intent, but intent for sure probably plays a part. But I'm very results focused.
So the intent is the communication part, where it's like you communicate to somebody your intentions. Hey, this is a meeting that I purposely want to solve this issue in this company that we have currently. And it's an issue that keeps popping up. And so we are here to solve this. There's nothing else involved. It's just, what do you guys think about solving it? That's intent.
Yeah. Clarifying intent. And yeah, I totally agree with that. I perhaps just have a different idea in my head as to what I thought intent was before that description that you provided, Nate, which is, I'm guessing, what they talk about more clearly in the book.
Yeah, for sure. Another example of intent is the book asks you to try to think back to a workplace where there was a coworker who you kind of felt like they always had an ulterior motive or something, which is like you might be working on a team project, but they're trying to get the glory for themselves or something. And it's like, okay, you're not actually focused on making this work. You're focused on making yourself look good. It's being able to trust that people are actually working towards a thing that they claim that they're working towards. So
I gotcha.
Nate, what do you think? Before the book, which of these would you traditionally think of as being trustworthy?
So the industry that I work in is actually a great example of this. Now, pest control companies give you your own truck, van, whatever, and then you take it home, and it's up to you to order your own supplies. And then you're given a schedule for the day. You go out and you do the route. right? So there's obviously a lot of trust that needs to be done in there. However, the example usually goes like this: 80-20 rule, right? There's 20%, or there's 20% of people who are just left alone at all times, and they just go do their thing. They're very like their scores and stuff are very stable. Someone like me. And then you have and then you have that 80% of people, and these people you constantly have to have the auditors go out and watch them from afar, or ask for audits on, like, say, text messages and stuff. They're constantly having to get asked questions like, okay, so if you get into this situation, how are you going to solve it, and what are you going to do about it? And then the bosses have to go up to the customer's house and ask, hey, how was your experience, blah blah blah. And if you think about speed of trust, right, the trust of being trustworthy, which is competent and well, reliable, quite frankly, is that you literally just wake up, you go out, you do your job, and then you go home. And on the company side, like the boss's side, they're like, oh, it's Nate, so it's nothing, Or if, like, let's say a problem did happen, you just text, right? Hey, what happened with this? Oh, this specific thing. Okay, I get it. Okay, good. Bam, you're done. It's so fast, so efficient, and it's really good for the company. Whereas,
sure,
what was that?
Keep going. I was going to say, this sounds exactly like a high trust environment for you versus a low trust environment.
Exactly.
Whereas because you have this high level of trust, if there is an issue, it's just a simple text, and then there's a peace of mind knowing that, yeah, Nate's on the job. He'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's it exactly, actually. And the funny part about that is I myself, with multiple years into this business, have only been audited like twice, and the only reasons why they did it was because they were forced to just randomly pick somebody, and I just happened to fall into it. Usually when it comes to audits, it's on purpose. They want to go watch someone. And again, that's like the 80% of technicians usually, but. To kind of continue on with that, that's the trustworthy side. Now, the untrustworthy side, right? Here's this one. You as the service manager or like branch manager or whatever, have to go out. You have to, wait for this person to get to that place when you could have been doing other things, right? That actually helps out the branch, or some type of customer service deal. But you have to wait, and then you have to hide yourself enough where it's not going to be like, oh, there he is. Right, I better be good this one time. You got to catch them doing their job, and then you have to go make special trips out to places to either restock someone who just didn't grab the stuff that they needed, and so they ran out, or you have to go ask, doorstep, knock knock knock, hey, how was your service? It's like the amount of wasted gas, wasted energy, wasted time, like. It's insane. And I mean, come on, man. When you're running a branch and you have all these computer things and all these meetings and stuff going down, you don't want to have to be out there watching someone to see if they do their job right, And then it's not only just doing their job right, it's also like, what are they like? There are some people who are like doing freaking like I've literally had people do drugs on the job. It's like, what the hell's going on here? And it's just such a weird thing, But it's definitely a perfect example of high trust versus low trust, and the just pure efficiency of it. Oh, it's Nate. He'll get it done. Bam.
Definitely, I hear you.
Versus, all that other stuff. A week long. Oh, we gotta go do all this stuff. Ugh.
Fair enough. All right, we'll kick it over to our third member of the panel here, Mrs. McGettit. So on the 4 cores, out of integrity, intent, capability, or results, which of the ones have you previously thought of mostly as the basis of being trustworthy?
Can you hear me?
It's a little echoey and muffled. Will, any thoughts?
Still echoey. We're doing are we filling dead air right now?
A little
She's
bit.
got a new she's got some earbuds she's trying to use,
Okay.
and
Okay.
trying to get those solved. So
Tell you
Gotcha,
what,
gotcha.
let us know.
Sound check.
Let us know when you're ready, and we'll. Other than that, I can keep yammering. I think Will brought up a good point.
I think I'm ready to go now.
Beautiful, so much better.
Yeah, apparently those things suck. Sorry.
You're good. What you got?
But what I wanted to say, for me, it's integrity and intent. Those are the first two that would come to mind. I have met plenty of people who are capable and can get results, who are terrible people. And you should not trust them. So the intent for me is actually kind of the biggest one, because what you are trying to accomplish, what your goals are the biggest thing. You can come in with a goal of trying and wanting to screw people over, or you can come in with a goal of legitimately wanting to help people, or create success in whatever environment you're going into, etc., etc. So those would be the big two for me.
I hear you. That definitely makes sense. I know I probably am the one that keeps coming back to this point, but the idea of trying to work with people who are really out for themselves, in my mind, that really stands out to me as untrustworthy people. And it in my opinion, it really goes against the intent category, which you also highlighted. Because I think intent is not just the person like putting their cards on the table and exactly saying exactly what they want, but it's understanding like what they're in it for, so you can understand how their actions build towards an end, whether it's in alignment with yours or your team's or something else. Because like you said, the results might be there, but maybe the looking for is not the one that you're hoping for.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. I've had a very short story, and I'm not going to give too many details because I don't want anybody to possibly, have it come back around type of a thing. I had let's say a coworker who was very good at their job, but they were also, their intents were always a negative thing. If they came into it because they wanted to be involved in the drama that was there, and they wanted to gain some weird sense of power for them, is how they saw it. It was strange to me because, we were doing both the same thing, and it was never anything to do with power in my brain, but that's how they viewed it. So they came in and they just created chaos immediately, and they were very capable. They were very good at doing the job, but they wanted to create extra drama for everybody. They enjoyed it. They thrived on it. And so they were not trustworthy at the end of it all. Even though they were really good at it, they got the results. They were very competent, very capable. You still did not want to be around that person. It was just not a good environment to be in.
That makes complete sense. I definitely understand that one myself. So one of the, still sticking to kind of the four cores area, this is early on in the book, but one of the things that the author talks about is the idea that in the 21st century, one of the downfalls that we've had is that we've replaced trust with regulation. So there's tons of examples about like things that are restricting you and how to do your job. And it's really, people are, like Will alluded to earlier, they're relying on the regulation. They're trusting that people are regulated well enough to not run a red light, that they're not going to run a red light, because not that they're trustworthy, but because that the rules are going to keep them in place. So what do you guys think about that? I know some of the stuff might seem like very self-apparent or like super obvious, but when you actually break it down, I think these might be some of the questions that people are asking a lot more in today's day and age, because like the author points out, we've started to rely a lot more on regulation rather than building trust and trying to be trustworthy ourselves, I'd argue.
I live in Minnesota. Oh, no, you go ahead.
I was just I got a really quick point. I want to kind of paraphrase Ron Paul, or at least the sentiment that he had when he was talking to a large group of audience. He was talking to a large audience while he was debating somebody on like the principles of libertarianism and stuff. And he asked the audience, like, how many of you guys here, if heroin was made legal tomorrow, would go out and start slamming heroin? And nobody in the audience like raised their hands. Everyone laughed, and it was all a good time. And it's like, exactly, the rules aren't what stops you from doing it, right? So like like regulating things, like it's a bombastic example, but like I think that like we can trust each other not to do heroin more than we can say, hey, it's a good thing those regulations are in place to stop everyone from doing heroin all the time, you know? So that's all that I had, was just that quick little thought. Go ahead,
Are you
Nate.
talking about gun laws there, Will?
No, heroin, like the
No, no, no.
opioid.
I mean, are you talking about the type of thing with like gun laws? If only we made guns illegal.
Oh, well, so yeah, so it kind of falls into that category. It's just that, like, you can trust people to be good people. Like, literally everybody can go out and get like a 5,000-pound machine that's capable of killing lots of people, you know? Like this car that I'm driving in right now. I'm not killing people with my car, just like I'm not killing people with all the guns that I own. Like, people have the ability to kill other people, and like trying to put in regulations to stop it from happening isn't necessarily like, I think this is kind of what the core of all like gun control laws come down to, is it's like, we just don't trust each other. We don't trust the culture that we live in. We don't trust the competency or the integrity or the, you know, all these 4 pillars. We don't trust it of our fellow citizens and stuff. And so we find ourselves in this category where we're trying to regulate our way into a safe world, when in reality it's like we're a bunch of people, and you know, there's some pea brains, there's some peanut brains out here among us, right? You know, admittedly there's a lot of people that are not very intelligent, but like very few people are like malicious, and you're not going to stop malicious people by putting laws and regulations into place. Like, all that does is just create a system or a society where everyone trusts each other a whole lot less. So I think it just kind of all plays together in that sort of sense.
Makes sense.
You know, I'd like to bring
I feel
up
the Benjamin Franklin quote coming out, if anyone wants to beat me to it. But it's those who trade liberty for security get neither and don't deserve either anyways. So
yep.
It's the idea that you can. Does regulation work? On some things, to certain extents, yes. But the Ron Paul example about like, it's not the laws keeping us from like all just ODing on heroin. It's the fact that we as people operate in a way that you can trust us not to go just die on heroin. So it's principles like that. And I understand why some regulation is necessary in a civilization, because it is it's the equalizer between people who have different goals. Like the tragedy of the commons is the classic example of this, which is that if one person's goal is to just enjoy a small park full of grass and another person's goal is to use the grass to feed their cattle, it's public land, but at the same time, you got to have some rules in place so that way it doesn't just get lost for everyone.
Yep.
Well, rules of society are important, obviously, so that way, I mean, we're all societal animals. So obviously we need to have some kind of structure in place for, you know, people should probably drive on the right side if you're going one way, and then drive on the left side if you're going another way. Otherwise you crash into each other and die, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely a scale and a nuance to it. You're absolutely right.
But the other, and I think it's funny that you brought up Benjamin Franklin, because I was about to use the what America or the USA was originally created for, right? Versus kind of what it is now. What it is now is a bunch of really stupid rules that we really don't need, regulations. And why? Because well, number one, they want to be in power, but number two, they don't trust people to have any 2 cents, right? Versus when the USA was first created, the idea was literally just, hey, go do your thing, man. If you need help, walk over here and ask for help, and then maybe we'll help you. But, you know, go do your thing. I trust you to take care of your house, your property. Do whatever you need to with it. That was
Definitely.
the idea, right?
I think when you do find those laws and regulations where you look at them on the face and you're like, this seems so irrelevant. Why does this exist? And I think the answer is it's a low trust environment. It's that whoever is making these rules doesn't trust you enough to believe that your self-interest is strong enough that it's going to prevent you from doing that.
Well, look at it this way. So back when a certain beer bug was running around, people were like, oh, you got to stay 6 feet apart. And so did they trust people to stay 6 feet apart? No, they put little freaking dots and arrows and stand here signs all over the place saying one person here, one person here, one person here. And it's like they're trying to make it so freaking obvious. It's like, really?
I like how some of the grocery stores had like a flow of traffic arrows in the aisles. Like, hey, this aisle is for going north to south. This aisle is for going south to north. Don't go the wrong way, or you're a sinner or something.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, did you guys hear about that one guy? There was some guy who went to jail because he went into a grocery store and put up a bunch of arrows that were like fake, and they would make people go around and round in circles forever.
Oh my god. This dude is my favorite.
Legend. Absolute legend.
What a G.
That made me so happy. That's like something I'd do.
I'd go fucking put $100 on his commissary. Hell yeah.
Do you remember when the gas prices spiked and they had the Joe Biden I did that stickers everywhere?
Yeah, man. Every fucking where.
Oh my god, that's so funny. And everybody got mad. They're like, no, you can't do that. How dare you? Oh, started removing them.
The times of the coof was very weird. And even trying to look at it from the trust lens,
what is Couth? Before we go too far, I don't know what Couth is.
C19, a certain beer. Name of a beer.
Getting the reference? Does he get the reference?
No.
2020 lockdowns.
Definitely 2020 will.
Oh, okay. The time of the Couth. Got it. The zombie time. The Android
virus,
19.
Yeah, that
got it.
I mean, trying to break it down on a granular level, I'm gonna have to
went
go
right
after
over
this
my head.
podcast. I'm definitely gonna have to like sit down and think about like how to draw out where like the trust breakdown happened and all that. But even you could see within the population there was just a distrust of like the information that people were getting, and then there's pushback, and then there's pushback on the pushback, and it's in my opinion, it's one of those times where, like the book talks about, when you get to that societal level, where when trust breaks down, you realize that you kind of needed it the most. It's like, I can't trust my neighbor to do these super basic things, and now I have to like worry about them.
Yep.
Think about California. You remember that one?
Oh yeah.
That was a bad one. That reminded me of Soviet Russia. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And nobody in their right mind should be telling other neighbors who's wearing a mask and who's not. That was one of the worst things I had ever heard. Gavin Newsom, right? He needs to go to the gulag.
I think one of the hardest parts about it was that one of the major symptoms that they pushed was that even if you're asymptomatic, you can have it. And that's when we started really just like hunting phantoms, and we were chasing ghosts, which is that later I'm not going to say much more than this. I don't want to get us kicked off. But
yeah, careful. We're on YouTube.
I know. What early on when we didn't know much, the idea was that even if you don't look like you have it, you might have it. And that was the first real breakdown in trust, which is that, like, can you even trust yourself? Whoa. After that, that's where the paranoia is spreading.
That reminds me quite a bit of what is it? Subconscious biases is what they call it. You may not be racist, but you might subconsciously, in the back of your brain that you don't even know, be racist.
Oh, jeez.
That was also a phenomenon around that time, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, I think that it all kind of ties back to I've always known, like, conceptually, that propaganda is effective, right? Like, I've always understood that idea, but then, like, to see it so pervasive, I think that's the right word. Pervasive? I don't know.
There
Whatever. So much of that word in the world that we live in is like, holy crap, like, I'm glad that I didn't live in, like, the late 1930s Germany, because, man, that would have been freaking tough. Everyone always probably thinks like, oh, I'm not going to be the guy who's going to turn into the zombie. I'm not going to be the idiot that falls for the obviously silly stuff. I'm not going to be the this, that, and the other person. And then we see so much of the people around us, and maybe perhaps ourselves, who knows, but so much of the people around us and so much of the people like near us and dear to us just fall for stuff that, and you know, they're probably thinking the same thing of folks like us or whatever, but it's just like, man, I had never thought that like that it could go this far, you know. What a crazy world.
I hear you. The more that I'm thinking about it, like, I guess all the craziness that's been happening over the last like half decade effectively was we had the sickness shut down, and then we also had a lot of racial tensions. And at the core of it, I think it is honestly just a lack of trust. It's a lack of trust that your neighbor is not trying to harm you, and that you don't trust them, that they don't have bad intentions. It's thinking the exact opposite. It's somehow we as a whole just stop trusting each other completely. And then at that point, it turned into a bit of scalp hunting. It turned into witch hunting. It turned into all this crazy stuff. And that's where you get the stickers on the floor that tell you to stay 6 feet apart, because no one trusts you to look out for them. So they feel like they have to look out for themselves.
Well, let me say something about that, right?
Hear it.
So we are in the age of information, right? The internet has appeared. A wild internet has appeared. And next thing you know, any and all information is out there for everybody. Think about what happened back in the when was that? The Dark Ages, when the Catholic Church ran everything, right? And then all of a sudden,
1200 to 1400.
Was it 1200, 1400? I thought it might have been around 1400, but I couldn't quite remember.
Somebody reading Sovereign Individual.
Yeah, and somebody printed or created a printing machine and then printed the Bible. What started happening after that? People are starting to realize what the Bible actually says, and now where's all the trust in the church that has been lying to them for so long? I think the same thing happened with the internet. A lot of information started flying around out there, and it's like, how much of that information can you trust? Well, a lot more than you actually thought, was true. And it goes completely against everything you were told. If you notice all the propaganda that has been happening, especially during that time, right around like 2014 all the way up until 2020, right? The propaganda, it doesn't even necessarily have to be propaganda, but the methods are the same. Hey, listen to CNN because we are the accredited by somebody powerful, I don't know, but we are accredited and they say that we're trustworthy. So listen to everything we say. And then you go on the internet and you're like, no, you're clearly not right. And you're feeding me shit, man. What are you doing? No, don't believe them. Believe us. What? And this is when people start waking up, right? And they're like, whoa, what's going on here? See, that's called trust. Now, what is that? What is that statistical number for how many people actually trust the mainstream news? Was it like 14%? Not even that.
Is it fair to call it mainstream anymore, or is it just like? I subscribe pretty heavily to the Michael Malice explanation, calling it the corporate press or the legacy media, because it's not mainstream anymore. You know what's mainstream now is stuff like Tim Pool or Patrick Bet David. Or unfortunately, like the Young Turks, or what we're doing. We're a little bit. Our numbers need to pump a little bit higher before we get to be mainstream. But where is all the attention going? It's not going to like the people that I build the towers for, right? Sorry guys, but you're going out of business. I'll keep building your towers for you as long as you want. But like, it's not the useful system anymore. The useful system is the internet, and the people that. That tell people what tell people stuff that's true, and also tell people what they want to hear. So I think it kind of also this kind of ties into the I got a thesis here. Tell me what you guys think about it. Right? It ties into the everything's a Ponzi hypothesis, where back when information was like hard to get and not prolific and whatever, like there was probably more scrutiny put to it, or well, maybe not more scrutiny put to it, but like the information that existed for everyone, right? It was held to like a higher standard or something, and it was considered more valuable, whether it was actually true or not. Like, we're making that irrelevant, right? But like when there was like your only source of what the Bible said was the priest. Like he was the one thing. It's like, oh, this is very valuable information. But then like once the information starts profligating or like being more distributed, right? Then now it's like, oh, this information is cheaper. Oh, now we can like second guess things, or oh, now we can like come up with different ideas and different theories. Like the more options that there are, the more like paths everyone will take, and the more everyone will like split apart from each other, you know, right? Like there's this fucking whole flat earth thing. There's this whole like birds aren't real thing. There's all these different like fun little memes that turn into like, you know, little pseudo religions of their own, because like we live in, like what Nate was saying, the information age. Now the world is just oversaturated with information, and so people can go any which way they want. And so like each individual bit of information is made cheaper by the fact that it's like now we're just inundated with information everywhere. It's like, you know, when you're a kid and you got to go to like McDonald's like once a month or like a couple times a year or whatever is like a special treat. I'm just telling my own personal experience here. You only got to go there like once or twice or whatever the heck. It's like, oh wow, this super cool thing. And the food was probably more quality back then too, but we'll digress from that for the sake of the analogy. And then like you turn into an adult and it's like, oh shit, I could go to McDonald's every day. And so you do, and you just get McDonald's all the time. And it's like, oh, this is way less special than when I only had it once. You know, it just falls into the everything's a Ponzi. And I think with information being as prolific as it is, like it's harder to get good quality stuff because you have to filter out through a whole bunch of crap to get there.
Well,
So
see, that's the reason why we're doing what we're doing right now, because we the DJ Roundtable have filtered through that information at least as much as possible. I mean,
oh man, yeah.
Even in our chat, we've had a lot. Yeah. Even in our chat, we've had a bunch of people shilling things, and we're like, oh, we don't know about that. And so what do we do? It wasn't just us; it was a bunch of people in there just start like ripping things apart. Like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And
hey man, why are you talking about this coin?
Yeah, exactly. And we end up finding these good projects like Liquid Loans, and a lot of people are way up on them, and nobody's wrecked. Good job,
market fit.
We did it. And see, here's the thing too that I thought was very interesting was RG3, you know, he really likes us, right? He thinks that we're doing a good thing, and I would agree.
He likes us.
But
I think it's safe to say.
It's safe to say. And he specified that, hey, why don't you go read this book? And then when you read the book, you start getting into the speed of trust. How much is it that we, the DJ Roundtable, need to trust each other? Right? You talk about intentions. Is there a possibility that one of us has a bad intention? Maybe. Don't know. How can you trust? That's the reason why we have like the little meetings and everything that we have about like, hey, this is the direction we're going, right? Everybody in agreement? Cool. You know, what are other ideas we have?
We could look at those four pillars to determine like you can guess if you can trust someone, or you can like evaluate them based off those four things that Zenith said earlier. Sorry, Nate, I shouldn't have interrupted.
Integrity,
Continue.
intent, competence, and results. Those four things.
Yeah,
100%.
There you go. No,
And-
I mean, thank you for your beautiful transition to my second topic, Nate. You are the man there. But yeah, one of the things we want to talk about is, this might be a little pedantic or too inside baseball for the audience, and I do apologize for that. But we wanted to analyze the idea of, as the DJ and Roundtable, how can we utilize trust, and what can we do to even improve on it? I think one of the things, I would argue that as a team, we do operate in a pretty high trust environment. Like, for example, we don't have to like constantly call each other and make sure that everyone's going to be on all the streams that they say they are. Like, this is the book club gang right here. I know for a fact that unless you guys tell me otherwise, I can pretty much count on you guys showing up. And then at the same time, I'm trying to do my best and come to every one of these book clubs with notes and have read this book like at least effectively like 1.5 times so that I know what I'm talking about. I have that competence.
I gave up
Godzilla.
Results. I gave up Godzilla for you, Zenith.
Thank you for your sacrifice.
You think you can trust me now?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Like, it's that high trust environment, and the benefit that we get out of it is that we can do things faster. We don't need as much prep time. And I mean, cost really isn't a factor here, but like, does it cost us extra of our own time trying to like spend all this extra effort and time to get things together. No, it's just like we trust each other. We've done this enough that we know the results and we know what we're capable of. So it happens. It meshes, and we point our guns all in the same direction and we go. So
I agree. I do think that like we've got those 4 corner pillar stones things, whatever you want to call them, those 4 points of the foundation, taken care of pretty well. Even though we didn't know like how to label them or whatever, having not read this book, like I think that all of us on the team kind of understand all of those things pretty well, and that's why we function together. So I'm basically beating the dead horse of what you just said. You're absolutely right.
Oh, Will, I love your eloquence. Those 4 cornerstone pillar things.
I am a peanut brain.
See, and here's the thing that I think happened kind of with us, right? We kind of started off on I would call it mutual respect, right? And I think that's where the trust comes in between all of us, because the mutual respect is we all know that we all put the work in, that we have already tried, that we're out there helping as many people as possible. And then we're like, hey, we should probably, get together and do a DGen Roundtable thing, right? And we can trust each other to be able to get things done, because we've already proven that in the past, right? So, I mean, what were the 4 cores again? Competency,
integrity,
though.
Integrity, intent, competency, results.
Yeah. Which one of those did we not do, but trusted each other anyways? Not a single one.
I think we did all of them. Okay, your trick question.
Yeah,
very clever, Nate. I was like, fuck, did we miss something? You have me over here second guessing myself, bro.
And see, it's funny when you break it all down like that. You reflect and you look back and you're like, so this is the reason why it works so well, because we already did all of that there. I mean, obviously we weren't like thinking anything like that, but it's like, you know what, this guy, I know I can trust this guy. When I invited Tracker and Jeff in, it's because we were constantly talking together. We were constantly like doing this move, do that move, blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden we got the DGen Citadel, whatever we called it back in the day, casino, and we all talked about things, right?
Crypto
and I was like, guys, do you mind if I bring them in?
Yeah, it was a good time.
It was a great time.
At a core,
I can't remember.
Think that we all go for it.
I was just gonna say I can't remember if Willie B. Long or if Brendan brought me into the DGen Roundtable. So shout out to whoever it was that did that, either Willie or Brendan. It was one of the two.
I think it was William, Brendan, and then there was one other person. I can't remember the name. Sorry.
Rough? Was it rough?
As people, I think that we on the team try to have the 4 cores. The 4 cores are what we can do as individuals. And then after that, as we interact as a group, that's where we get to the second layer of all the stuff that the book was talking about. So the 13 behaviors. And honestly, like going through the list, we do a pretty decent job at hitting most of these, I'd argue. So like some of the big ones are like talk straight, demonstrate respect, create transparency, show loyalty, deliver results, get better. That's all we do is try to get better. Confront reality. Oh, we are trying to confront reality on a daily basis with these markets, let me tell you. And then practicing accountability. Like even on this show, you guys have, or I can't remember if it was this one or maybe a Whiskey Wednesday where I was like, yeah, I dropped the ball and I didn't get coffee on when I wanted. It's like, I'm trying to make sure that I'm holding myself accountable. So that way you guys know that if I mess up, I also can see that I messed up and I'll accept it and I'll try to work on it. It's, I don't know. This has been definitely a different team building exercise for me because as everyone knows at this point, I'm former military. The team building that goes on there is completely different. We're just a bunch of ragtag individuals with some similar goals and ideas, and we're trying to run an entire show and channel and Telegram together. So doing that it's been a new experience and it's been a bit of a ride, but this is a fun one, let me tell you.
I actually want to. No, excuse me.
Go ahead.
I wanted to mention that I'm actually really proud of the way that our team handles most situations, especially accountability is something that I personally think a lot of people are lacking nowadays. It's very much, I think they mentioned this in the book too. We're moving into a victim mentality world right now. But our team is very, very good about as soon as somebody messes something up or misses something, or like something gets, screwed over in some way, everybody's just like on top of that.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I think is part of the diagnosis of what you're saying is this is something I've been seeing as well. And it's things that people have been trying to piece together for a long time. Is that unfortunately, with the rise of cancel culture, it effectively was just a mob. And the reality is that you can't appease the mob. So what some people tried to do initially was they tried to apologize to the mob, but then the mob didn't take their apology as an apology. They took it as an admission of guilt and then just lambasted the person even further. And what that kind of did is it created this environment where the correct answer when the mob is coming after you is never apologize, aka never be self-accountable.
Don't feed the troll.
Exactly. You can't reason with the mongrels. They
Don't
want to kill you.
negotiate with terrorists.
Correct.
You
Thank
can't
Will.
fix crazy. That's how I like to say that. You can't fix the crazy.
Exactly. Unfortunately, because of the way I'd argue it's the fallout of some of the tools that we've built in the 21st century, especially in like late 2010s and whatnot, which is just the proliferation of social media and how fast it goes, and just like honestly how deep and entrenched in everyone's personal lives it is. Everyone is so online that it is very attached to your actual real life in certain ways, where like if you are an online personality, there's a real possibility that like if the HR department catches wind of people getting upset about you, it might just be easier for your company to fire you than try to like resolve the situation. It's unfortunate, but I think you hit that one right on the head.
Well, that if your company tries to do that, then that's when you know you've got an untrustworthy company. So what you can do in that scenario is you could say, thank you for getting rid of me. I realize that you're the problem, and I should not be working here for a company that's going to, fire me over something so insignificant as some people complaining on the internet.
Yeah,
and that'd be another example of an untrustworthy, or an trustless system, right?
Yeah, low trust areas.
Yep.
Fortunately, we have moved into that. But
what are the?
Go for it.
I was gonna caveat into one of the 13 things. So go ahead and say your piece.
I was
or
gonna
not
say
caveat.
That...
Transition.
Segue.
Pivot.
Segue. That's the one.
Yeah, this is actually a conversation I had with somebody at the Pulse Chain Tour meetup, which is he was talking about trying to organize a libertarian group. He was like, it's so ridiculous trying to get libertarians to organize and meet up at a certain event. I said, it's hard to get libertarians to agree on any one thing anyways. And the guy had a really good chuckle over that one, because it is this weird, like, hyper-atomized, individualistic ideology. And I think we do get a little bit of that in the crypto space, which is that we are all inherently somewhat non-trusting of the government or a fiat currency or something of the sort, and we're looking to diversify elsewhere. So because of that, there's a lot of skepticism, and I think it's very easy for the crypto space to devolve into low trust environments. And I will say there's arguably some good reason for that. I mean, as much flack as we want to give Gary Gensler, when he says that the crypto sphere is rife with hucksters, fraudsters, and scammers, like, unfortunately, he's not entirely wrong.
Oh yeah, there's a large portion of the crypto sphere that's full of fraudsters, hucksters, and scam artists, and it sucks. But like, so is the real world,
Yeah,
it's like this is where like
avenue to do it.
Yeah, and it's faster and it's more painful, and it's so easy to make a small mistake and lose everything, which is why you need to, like, if you're going to be in this space, you need to take it very seriously and either do almost nothing, take almost zero action, or like have a very you need to fucking first off join our Telegram and be surrounded with fucking knowledgeable veterans who know some things, right, and who are also trustworthy people. Like, we're not just trustworthy as individuals, we're trustworthy as a community and as a team, right? And you don't need to take my word for it. You can just like look at my actions. You can read the messages I've posted. You can and boom, perfect transition time. Zenith, one of the things you had said earlier, one of the 13 things was something about like make it easy for other people to verify the things that you're saying. What was that one? What was that like that bullet point? Can you repeat that? It's something about like be easy to verify. Like if I say the sky is
clarify expectations.
No.
Results.
I'm not going to get caught up in the weeds.
What
of
you're saying
thing.
does track, which is that make it easy to verify what you're doing, aka show your results. Show
exactly. Show the work, or like if you're not going to show the work, then show something that like other people can observe, and also like it's fine and fantastic for me to say like, hey, I was in the Marine Corps for 8 years. Well, fuck, I just did. I guess I haven't shown any proof for that. So that's a bad example. But like I could say, hey, I'm driving right now. And it's super easy to verify because like you could see there's cars behind me. I'm like moving my steering wheel along, right? Like, so like say things that are easy to verify, and that helps build trust, and that helps build like, hey, this is a reliable person. He says things that are congruent with the reality, right? Be easy to verify.
Are you talking about talk straight and confront reality?
Yeah, those things.
Yeah,
those are the ones.
It's basically like, don't beat around the bush. Actually tell people what you're trying to tell them. And then at the same time, don't try to sweep things under the rug. And if there's a problem, like address the problem. Don't try to pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
There's a lot of states. There's a lot of different types of people though too. And I would say it's all about maybe the environment you're in. I know like for myself, I feel like I need to leave this current state that I'm in. The reason why is because nobody, it's called Minnesota nice for a reason. And it's because they're very nice to your face until you turn around. And then all of it comes dumping out onto everybody else. They're, that unfortunately you never know with every single time you're talking to somebody, you have no idea what they're really thinking, but they'll talk straight to your face and be very nice to you. So for me, like my latest boss, when I walked in for the interview, he we were doing the normal interview company thing, right? And then all of a sudden he's like, he just suddenly changed, He was like, okay, we're going to cut the bullshit here. This is what I'm looking for. Because I think he realized that that's the type of person I was. I'm like, oh, thank God. And
there's a reason that trope works and why people do find it effective and refreshing is because getting lied to or just like played. You're entirely correct here.
Yeah. And here's the funny thing, right? He had been up in Minnesota for only 8 months. Do you know where he was from? Texas. And of course, as soon as I get that refreshing, like, oh my God, I can finally like talk to somebody like this, right? Of course, from a different state.
So not Minnesota. I find that kind of surprising, just like on a side note, because I've generally found that like people up north have better teamwork than people down in the south. And I thought that it had something to do with like surviving the cold and needing to rely on your neighbors and stuff, but I don't know. That's
it's
just
the alcohol. You're talking about like Wisconsin, north.
That's how Washington is, or at least out of Seattle, kind of Washington. But
here's the thing about teamwork, in the environment of being like up north in the cold.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I don't want to shake the cage. I don't want to speak my mind. There's a lot of just, duck your head, just go with the flow. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
And an unbelievable amount of my friends throughout my life have been like that. And for me, I purposely am like, nah, I refuse to be like that.
That's fair. Yeah. I say one of the 13 behaviors that I think I forgot to mention at this point, but it's called keep commitments, not only to other people, but also yourself. And then one of the nice things that I think really keeps this book very grounded is that when it was going through all the 13 different behaviors, it talks about the behavior and then it says, here it is an example of what this looks like. Here it is an example of when you take this too far and it's actively detrimental.
Yeah.
And that was a nice sobering point for me to like listen to an author who's like, I'm not trying to just blindly optimism you to death, because the book doesn't. It also talks about like, look, if you do this whole trust thing wrong, you are going to get wrecked. So be careful with how you extend smart trust. There's a reason that they call it smart trust. But to go back to the keeping commitments thing, it was interesting that he talked about that keeping commitments is not just to other people, but it's also to yourself. And then the shocking thing for me was towards the end, the guy was like, look, I had to learn the hard way that when you make commitments, you should probably do it pretty sparingly. In line with the rest of the stuff, which is that your commitment should be what you're capable of doing, and also understand how your commitments are going to affect your life. So like if you make a commitment like this guy did, he's like, as part of their family, like around New Year's, I think they were talking about like making resolutions. And he's like, I resolved to only drink water for an entire year. He's like, look, I stuck to that commitment. Was it awful? Yes. Will I ever do that again? Absolutely not.
Yep. Yeah, he learned the value of like sometimes I think what he was specifically saying in that passage. Oh snap! I'm echoing. Hang on. Fuck with my headset here. I think what he was saying in that passage. That better? Okay, that sounds better. What he was saying in that passage is like you need to not be like cocky and arrogant about your commitments. You need to like take it very seriously. You know, there's people that commit to too much. There's people that commit to too little. And that was the instance where he was just like, he's like, you know what? I can do anything, right? And he made a really dumb commitment. And then he's like, ah, shit. Am I going to be a bitch and go back on my word? Or am I going to be a person that does the things that I say and says the things that I do, you know? So I remember that now that you mentioned it, Zenith. That was super funny talking about I'm only going to drink water for a year. It's like, damn.
Yeah, congruency is the word, right? You got to make sure that you stay congruent. So, like, you know, again, in my industry, it's kind of surprising just how many correlations there are in my industry versus this book. But like, when you're talking to a customer, you don't say, "Oh yes, I'll get rid of them. I'll get rid of the spiders." You don't say that. Because you can't get rid of all of them. You can reduce them to the point though where people just don't see them anymore though, right?
Yep.
So, and that's the whole point. And here's the funny thing: whenever anybody talks about, and you guys probably heard this, you know, just get rid of the spiders. You know, let's kill off the spiders, something like that, right? Or kill the bugs, or get rid of the bugs. But what I actually have to tell people is I can reduce them for you to the point where you're probably not really going to see them at all. But you have to be very specific with your wording. And that's the funny thing about that is, especially with like salesmen, third-party salesmen, when they come up during the summertime, that summer rush, they're sitting there, yeah, we'll get rid of them all. We'll get rid of them all. And then I walk up to the customer and I'm like, well, no, not necessarily. And don't expect that. But I can promise you that I'll definitely reduce them a lot, and it's going to be worth it. But then
like a little bit of managing expectations with that too.
Exactly, managing expectations. But then at that point, the trust is lost a little bit in the company, right? Because it's like, oh, well, one guy told me one thing, and now you're telling me another thing. Okay, so now what is it really? You know, I was promised one thing, but you're telling me this is the way it actually works. Again, what? And then then you end up losing the customer, and or the customer starts calling in for more treatments for the reservices, the free reservices, than they actually need, to the point where they can actually kind of toxify their home, right? Because they feel like it has to be something else. And so again, the speed of trust, right? It can be so efficient. Everybody be like, hey, this is exactly what I was expecting, right? And then nobody has any issues, versus, okay, so which is the truth? What's that? And then you have to explain everything and blah, blah, blah. Oh my God. And we're going through this again, you know? And quite frankly, what was it in the book that they were talking about, where not only is it speed itself, but it's also, you get like he's putting it in a weird way, but
getting taxed for dividends,
right? Yep. Taxes and dividends. And think about it this way: if you lose a customer because, you know, so many things are being said and thrown around, and then the expectations are incorrect, So not only did you waste time having to explain extra amounts of words to people and then make them unhappy, not feeling good about the experience, right? But then on top of it, they're canceling, and so now you're out, however much money per month that they were paying. So it's just a pure loss, losing time, losing money.
You also
But
lose reputation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If you're able to maintain that trust, then what happens? Just, oh, you're here. Great. I'm glad. I'm starting to see an uptick in insects. Could you spray for me? Sure thing. Bam. Done. All over. Happily paid. And they're going to stick with you for years.
Because there's congruence.
The book's point about thinking about trust, why trust is worth it, building trust is worth it because you're going to do things faster for cheaper. I think that's one of the best selling points for this entire way of thinking, which is that the book tries to create this new perspective for you of you can look at things through the financial lens. Or I'm a project manager, so this is exactly my entire world is scope, cost, money, and schedule. It's like we got to manage all these things. And if I have to go through and manually check everything myself because I don't trust the contractor to do something, then yeah, it's going to waste my time. It's going to waste their time. It's going to cost everyone more money. But even the book gives a great example. I want to say it was Warren Buffett was buying Walmart, and then they ended up like doing the deal in a month because Warren Buffett was like, no, I don't need to go through and verify every single document. I trust that Walmart is a reputable company and they're going to have everything there. So when I go look for something, I trust them that it's going to be there. And because of that, he was able to get this merger and this deal done in like a month, as opposed to what people thought was going to take like 2 years. So that's massive savings. Just because you're working with someone who you think is trustworthy, you try to be trustworthy yourself, and because you extend that trust to each other, everybody wins.
Hit the nail on the head there, man.
Yeah.
So the interesting little segue I guess we can kind of move into here is why were smart contracts created?
Ooh. Because we live in a world where people can't necessarily trust each other. And so we basically write code that is executed with money, like an if-then, like you put your quarter into the machine, and then the if-then happens, and then you get the result. And it's like we are essentially paying for the convenience of not needing to trust people. So it's one more tax to add on to the pile. Now it's super cheap with Ethereum. Well, it was cheap. It's not cheap anymore.
It used to be cheap.
Freaking $20 swaps, $50 swaps on Uniswap.
Dude, I had a $40 swap like 2 days ago.
Ugh.
Yeah, but when you're thinking about that, right? It's like, what's the normal way that you've always in traditional finance? What's the way you've normally done it? Well, you have to go trust an institution of some kind to hold your money, and then move it over to whatever it is you're doing, and then trust that they're going to bring that right back to you. So now with the code, it does it automatically for you. It's a trustless code, or maybe they call it trustless code, but I would call it more perfect trust, where you can always trust it to do what it was designed to do.
Yep.
And because of that, it is a perfect trust.
The other half of this smart contract equation, though, is that the code is transparent and easy to view, which is that, sure, I can trust this system to do the thing it's designed to do. However, if I can't look inside the black box and actually see what you've designed this thing to do, how do I trust it? So that's where we're at in the crypto world, which is when you got to make, especially for crypto, you got to have your code open to the public. Granted, this does unfortunately create the possibility for hackers or malicious parties to get the code and try to exploit it. But this is, again, where we get to, there's other ways you can build trust with projects you're building, which is you go get your code audited multiple times by different sources, so that other people are also saying, like, yes, we tried to crack this thing is written correctly, therefore if you trust us, you can trust this. And then again, it's as far as you try to remove trust from the crypto scenario, we like to think that we've done it pretty darn good, and I'd argue we have. However, at the same time, you got to trust something or someone somewhere. It's just a matter of where you want to put that thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And what one thing that's kind of funny to me is how hard the government is fighting to try and make it so that to make it seem that crypto is not trustworthy.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we have things like the blockchain where you can literally, if you're bored, I guess, or if you have a lot of time, you can sit there and watch every single transaction that's ever happened. And
Absolutely.
meanwhile, they've got these banks that are doing like whatever the hell they want. I used to work at US Bank, and they were talking about while I was there that FedEx had recently been caught and sued for skimming money off the top of people's bank accounts. They just were flat out stealing their customers' money. And that's what they're trying to say is better. All right,
Yeah, I'll say this. There's definitely a reason that we're all in the space that we are in. And is this an imperfect system? Unfortunately, yes. Is it better than a lot of the other ones? I would argue yes. Specifically with the topic of government and even the military with this, there's a lot of things that we as citizens just can't see or are privy to. I'd argue that there's good reason for it. Like, I'd argue it's a very good reason that you can't just look at anyone else's bank account at any time. That would cause a lot of problems. And even when it comes to like classified information or like closed door briefings with like certain government panels or committees, it's that stuff works in a high trust environment where even though you're not allowed to look at what's going on in there, you trust that those people have your best interests at heart, or at least they're trying to do what they're saying they're trying to do, and that you can trust them to have integrity. And then also, hopefully they have some track record and they have the ability to do what they're trying to solve. I think we've had that breakdown. So now that we're no longer in that high trust system, stuff like that is an active detriment.
I think it's a generational thing, man.
It could be too. What do you mean by that?
Well, what's the generation that said you ruined our futures, and so screw you, man?
Oh, the Gen
The
X.
millennials.
The millennials.
Oh,
I think
Gen
Gen
X
X still has.
Yeah.
I think Gen X has good faith with the ones that came before them.
Yeah, and so now that they're moving out because they're old, I mean, who are the only people who actually watch like news channels anymore, like Fox 9 or whatever, that are not online?
I know there's the generations that like grew up with it, so they still have that trust for it.
Yes. Yep. And so the trustworthiness of a system is generational. You got the Xers who are like, I think I can trust CNN when they say something. They're very credible. And meanwhile, you've got us millennials like, I mean, look at the internet. Look what's said over here.
Part of what's going on there is that some of at least the millennial generation is starting to scrutinize it to the point where they can actually start see that like, oh, you're actually not doing the things that you're trying to do, or you actually have an ulterior motive here versus, I mean, this is coming from a guy who thinks that legacy media needs to die its horrible death, but like they kind of just stopped trying to audit it and they just accept it as what it is. I mean, it's very important to like take a look at what goes on with mainstream media. Like I use it for news articles all the time, but I also understand that when I go look at that CNN article, I can't just look at the headline. I have to read the entire thing to understand where they get their pieces of information from, so then I can go look at that from a separate source.
Yeah, and here's
It'll
the thing
inform
about
me as to what's going on. It like gets the inklings and the feelings going on, and then I have to go figure out exactly what's happening. So,
and when you're looking at like the maybe like the trust level, right?
Yeah.
Think about it this way. One favorite thing that I like to use is music. What's the popular music of the generation, right? Well, in the 90s, the millennial time, right? The popularity was punk, right? And that came into the 2000s. And then it was grunge, but then it was also like rap. So the grunge, like the rap itself was more different diversities, I would say, of culture. Whereas the grunge was kind of like a more depressed sound, right? And then the punk was like the screw you, I'm not going to listen to whatever it is that you have to say, you know, the rebellion or whatever. And so if you fit those together and you look at the way for millennials to have made money and or create a home for themselves, you know, their parents were able to buy a home. They're able to create a family and have, you know, the white picket fence and all that, or at least close enough to it. Whereas us millennials, what did we get? We literally can't do any of that. And so we were told to put in the 401ks. We're told to, you know, save money, but it's not working for us, right? Maybe put it into stocks. That's a little more risky, right? And I can get more percentages off of that. Oh, it's not quite enough though. And then all of a sudden this thing called crypto comes out, and crypto is like super risky, but you can get like 100 X's. It's no longer percentages. It's not 100% anymore. It's 100 times the money. And so how are millennials able to actually get that life that their parents had or their grandparents had? Oh, get into crypto and things like it, right? That's just kind of the example I like to use about why I would say kind of the flow of time has created. But yeah.
That's fair. To go back to your band point, I think one interesting thing that you can track all the way throughout the different decades and generations in music, but like one of the biggest insults that an audience could throw at a creator was claiming that they were selling out to either like the man or the label. And what that really was is at its core, it's just an attack on your intent. It's saying that your intent is no longer to make good music or to stick to your original message, but your intent has now shifted to appease a higher power that pays you well. And it's interesting like how that through all of these different like cultures and like different genres, that still has persisted as like the single thing of calling somebody a sellout is the like one of the worst things that your audience could accuse you of. What do you guys think about that?
You're in it for the money, not in it for the purity.
Yeah, they'd be like, they changed.
I'm in it for the tech. What are you talking?
Don't get me wrong.
We're all in this for the tech, brother.
I do like money.
True. All right, I want to transition to the final segment that I had planned, and I want to actually like do some case study / breakdown, trying to use the speed of trust layout as like a template to analyze some of the crypto projects that we think have gone well or gone not well, and try to see if we can understand why it is. So like, I'll start
like
off
this.
with,
You want to talk about the speed of distrust? Because I got one for that.
we can definitely talk about that. If you want to cover a project where you think they fail on the points, do that. I'll start us off real quick though. So if we want to talk about the granddaddy Bitcoin, how does Bitcoin try to be trustworthy? Well, if you try to look at the founder, it's Satoshi Nakamoto. No one knows who he is. Can we really trust that he has integrity? Who knows? The only thing we can do is look at his intent. So you go read the white paper, go see what Bitcoin was trying to accomplish. I'd argue it stuck to it pretty good. And then we can go look at competency. Does Bitcoin have the ability to try to do what it wants to do? I'd argue yes. And if anything, the competency is only growing because the competency was partly reliant on the community. Like it needs us to run miners and verifiers and nodes to keep that network going. And then finally, results. Well, at the time, there were no results, so the price reflected the risk. But we're at the point now where I want to say Bitcoin has made 48 consecutive all-time highs. So yeah, the results are in, and I'd argue that the price reflects it. And you can see that because I'd argue Bitcoin is the singular crypto that people trust the most. Granted, I think all of us do have that grain of salt that this all could go to zero at any moment. Something mass coronal extinction event. But so that's my analysis. Does it have integrity? I'd argue it's for the most part. You look at the white paper, it seems like the person is meaning what they say. The intent's pretty explicit. And then as far as competency, looks like it. And then results, yeah, it's done what it's been trying to do. It's shown results. And at the same time, all those like Satoshi wallets, they still haven't even touched a damn thing. So there you go. What do you guys think of my analysis?
I like it.
That's good analysis. I don't have anything further to add to yours, but I will say that earlier today I was having a discussion with a distinguished gentleman on Threads, which Threads is pretty fun. If you guys aren't on Threads, I would say go get on Threads because there's a lot of silly stuff that happens on there it's quite amusing. But I was I was talking to him about like taxes and why people shouldn't pay them, or like why you shouldn't be ashamed of not wanting to pay taxes. And he was like, "Oh, you look like the kind of guy who's into Bitcoin and NFT." And I was like,
You're
You mean like-
goddamn right I am.
"You mean like the trustless peer-to-peer network digital cash that doesn't rely on like the government and blood?" And I just like spelled it out, and I had like a little win in my heart, but
I
like
think
a loss
you
in
mean you
the.
dunked on that man from the 3-point line.
It was fun. It was a good time. But Threads is fun, guys. I suggest hopping on Threads occasionally and seeing some of the silliness that goes on. But
Fair enough.
What is
but yeah,
Threads?
like Bitcoin is Threads is Instagram's version of Twitter. So it's a lot. It's
Twitter
a
Spaces,
very
right?
just Twitter. Just like it's a place for people to
It's
chat
a
and
text-based social media platform.
correct.
Hold on.
Yeah, I mean it's
Alright.
pretty decent, I would say.
Do you guys have any projects you wanna analyze?
Yeah, so I'm gonna do something here, all right? So Zenith, you're going to ask me one of the 4 cores. And we're gonna go through all 4 cores, and I'm gonna talk about 9-inch.
9-inch.
Oh,
okay.
I knew it. I fucking knew it. I was like, I bet Nate's gonna talk about 9-inch. Oh shit.
I love talking about that lengthy thing.
All right. I hope
Yes.
this is an easy one to start off with. Let's start off with
Hey.
intent. Is 9-inch clear with its intent?
9-inch was very clear with its intent.
What is the
it-
intent?
Its intent was, at least what they told us, was to be able to provide a farming place or liquidity providing place for meme coins. Simple
Fair
enough,
enough.
and that's not a bad idea. It's
Right.
actually a pretty decent idea. Hey, because of that, I'm on board with it. Let's go ahead and move on.
All right. So the team behind 9-inch, would you say that they have integrity? Like, are they at least doxed? I would argue that's step 1 of integrity, is showing people who you are.
Some of the team was, some of the team wasn't. I know at least like Hexy Bastard, he was making the
front man, right?
rounds. What was that?
He's the front man.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
He's the front
Okay.
man. And so, I mean, obviously you got to look at the leader, right?
Does he
And that's the
appear
most
to at
important
least
one.
hold commitments that he makes?
It seemed as though there's the possibility that he moved some funds to somewhere from sacrificers. Not quite sure, know where to go. So that's up for debate. And here's the thing: if you don't quite know, and if it's unknown, then you don't have trust there. So I would say ultimately that one's a fail. But he did dox him. He did dox himself. He was able to go onto a lot of different platforms and talk about things. So
Okay.
that's kind of a half and half, I would say. But that's still kind of like I can understand someone with privacy. Look at Buck, right, from the PH ecosystem. He didn't really dox himself, but he had a trying to remember what was his partner's name or whatever.
Dylan.
Dylan, thank you. Yeah, Dylan was doxxed. Okay. So, and they did have a good system. However, they also had the same issue where sacrifice money went somewhere. Where'd it go though? Right. But their system has been working. So moving on.
Okay. Competence. Is the team behind 9-inch competent? Do they appear like they have the ability to create a dex?
Oof.
I'll just use I'll use Tracker's words. It was amateur hour.
All right.
Basically everything went wrong. The only thing that went good or was working correctly during launch was the back end, aka the end, the most important end at least, right? Where like if you put your coins in, you are technically getting the correct APYs or whatever, and things are working. But everything else about it was just failing.
Fair enough. All right, last one. Results. Had the team accomplished anything beforehand? Did they have a resume to work off of?
No.
Okay.
Long story short, no. They were like programmers, but not necessarily. They hadn't really done anything big at that time. And competency can be proven through the results, right?
Possible. Yeah. Keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
And so what were the results? The
They
results
had
were
some coins, didn't they?
What was that?
Didn't they make a coin or something? Like, was Hexy one the guy who made Poor Pleb?
No.
Okay.
No, that was I don't even know who did that one.
Okay. Never mind. Sorry.
But no, he made 9-inch in BBC.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Those are our 4 cores. As we sum this all together, how would you guys rate that analysis?
So I guess this is where, and then here's the big thing, right? So this is where you really lose trust very quickly. So I start kind of pointing out these issues, that I'm like, kind of seems weird, and I'm going directly to the anybody who represents 9-inch in the 9-inch chat, and I'm like, okay, so I see what you're trying to do. Your intentions are good, and I like the idea of it, right? You need places for meme coins to go, but what about this? What about that? Blah blah blah, and you start asking, and it gets to the point where their answers is like, I don't really know. And if the answers to the people who are supposed to be representing and able to answer these questions really just have like, I don't know, then that leaves you with no trust. And in fact, it starts making you think, what are they really up to? What are they really doing?
Okay.
And then this right here, all a part of it was during the launch. And it got to the point where I was questioning so much and they were unable to answer it that they just straight up banned me.
Oh boy.
Which imagine how that looked for anybody with any kind of sense in that
bad
chat.
branding.
That's bad branding. This guy's asking legitimate questions, and he's not fudding. He's asking as nicely as possible, just legitimate questions about like, hey, what about this? What about that? You guys are unable to answer, and then you ban this guy. Anybody with any brain that goes, hey, you know what? I'm a little bit scared about this. Can you help? Can you bring in trust for me? As soon as that happens, out. Which would explain why during that launch there was a lot of people that got wrecked. Even the best strategies, like even like I don't know if he wants me to say, but like Jeff, he lost a little bit of money. Admittedly, he said he had a lot of fun with it though, because it was kind of like a whole fun thing that we were doing. And I made out with a profit, but it was a very small amount of profit. Everybody else, either for the most part, and even in our Telegram, they kind of broke even or made a little bit of profit. Some lost just a little bit. But we did see the disaster that could have happened. There was a lot of people that got wrecked. And so the speed of trust, again, we're running into money issues, right? We're running into time issues. I had to do a lot of research looking into it, being like, what on earth is this? Rather than like, say, liquid loans, it's like, what was it? Uncle was in our chat and he straight up was asking Walrus, what about this? What about that? And there's a bunch of red flags going there. What is the first thing that Walrus did? Instantly answer everything, to the point where it's like, wow, okay, never mind. That was a total nothing burger that I just came up with. Speed of trust. Look at where Liquid Loans is. The number 2 overall protocol on Pulse Chain.
Yeah, I would argue even if you want to do the analysis on the Liquid Loans team, they have a very different outcome than the 9-inch gang, which is that when it comes to integrity, those guys have, I'd argue that it's about as good as you can get. A lot of the team is doxxed. They always try to tell you exactly what's going on. How many updates did those guys post? It was like at least one a week, constantly for so long. Again, intent, they've been very clear the entire time with their intent. They were even warning people like, look, we're making a tool. If you use this wrong, you can wreck yourselves. It's like the intent was there. They're trying, like even Walrus, like his entire role was just the head of like PR effectively, or community relations, I think it was what it was. And his entire goal was just try to get out there and tell people what they're trying to do and why. Like when you have an entire person dedicated to that, it says something. As far as competence goes, I don't know the entirety of their team's resumes, but based on all the stuff that they put out previously, yeah, I'd argue these are very competent people. They know what they're doing. They present it well, and the product appears to be working very well. And as far as results go, like, yeah, I don't know if I can't speak to their resumes beforehand, but at the same time, like the product is working. Everything they said they were going to do, they've done. It's night and day. So because of that, it's very easy to trust these guys and go look at their material that they put out and be able to believe that what it's telling you is true. That's my 2 cents. Shout out to the Liquid Loans guys.
They're doing a good job.
Good arbiters of trust.
I would say so, yes.
I have one spicy analysis that I want to finish off with. This, I'm just going to preface it with this, which is that I am a Hexican. Hell, my YouTube channel and my Twitter handle is Hexico Space Force. I think Hex is a fantastic product, and I do believe in what it is. However, I think that unfortunately, during the initial launch of Hex, Richard Hart, as a persona, gave people reason to believe that he was not trustworthy. And a large part of it was, I think, the intent piece and a bit of the... as far as the integrity goes, I think he's been a pretty... I don't know, I'm losing words here, but like he's been a pretty trustworthy guy from the integrity standpoint, but the intent confused the hell out of people. Back when he was doing the whole outrage marketing thing, as far as like people that were dedicated to the actual project and the merits of it, it was very confusing to see this person who you thought was working towards this project doing all this weird, crazy, outlandish stuff. So from that standpoint, that absolutely is the red flag that I think a lot of people were catching on to when it came to the trustworthiness. However, when it comes to competence and results, I'll say this. I don't think anybody can beat Richard Hart when it comes to that. The man has been around the space for a long time, done a lot, did very well with Bitcoin. Hex came out, has performed flawlessly. Pulse Chain came out, has been performing flawlessly as well. Even PulseX and the bridge, like even now when he switched to entirely decentralized, like the competency and results are there. The integrity, I argue, is there. But that one missing factor for a lot of people was intent. No one knew what Richard was trying to get at with all the outrage marketing and all like the weird stuff. So that's where people got turned off. And I can understand why. I'll say that much.
I would say that actually is what brought me into it. That's what brought me into Hex, was the outrage marketing. Like I wouldn't have seen his stuff without that.
Look, I'm not saying that what he didn't do didn't work, because it absolutely did. I'd argue that what he was trying to do worked. However, from like the suit and tie, blue collars, or like the suit and tie, like try to present yourself as a clean cut person, it was not that. But that was never the goal. So
there was definitely a cost.
Yeah. But for people that are used to very clean cut suit and tie people coming to tell you like why their hedge fund that's been around for 150 years is the best to invest in, you can trust your money with us. That looked very different than Richard. So
I'm going to expand on that right there. Exactly what you said, Zenith. The hedge fund, you can trust us with your money. What is it that those same people, those hedge fund people, are saying about crypto bros? They're like, I've literally heard these guys, these macro investors that tell these large institutions, where to put the money. And they're like, and a lot of these institutions literally come out and say, hey, this crypto thing is kind of crazy. Maybe we should allocate something into there. And a lot of these guys, at least up until now, have been like, well, Don't do it. I mean, have you seen those guys? They're they're fat, pudgy, and they got, you know, Dorito shit all over them, and they don't even own a suit, and they've always got like these weird like oversized shirts on, and they're wearing shorts and stuff. That it's not a professional space, and they it's all, you know, drugs, and they just go on and on and on about that stuff. And it's kind of like, what is the word? You are judged based on your appearance, and based on the judgment, you are either trusted or not trusted. And
like
so
preconceived notions.
Exactly. If you want to be trusted, you must look trustworthy. And look at SBF, right? That was a weird looking guy. That was a really weird looking guy.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're going with this, Nate, but I like it.
Well, where we're going with it here is, unfortunately, crypto is not trustworthy. It's not trustworthy because number one, we did have a lot of scammers and everything like that, you know, blah, 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 whatever. But it was out in the open. It was out in the open, not hidden. Everyone can say, oh, well, you know, the dollar is, you know, funding all this stuff. Yeah, but it's hidden. Nobody sees it. So therefore, nobody really knows it's going on. And even if you think it's going on, they can just call you crazy, and then people will be like, maybe he is just crazy, right? Whereas with crypto, it's all in the open. You see it all. But then it's like, okay, that's a bad one. But then the other one, the preconceived notions, right? The SBFs of the world. I mean, freaking Vitalik. That kid walks into a room and you're like, oh God, what's this gangly thing over here? Right?
Slenderman.
Are you gonna trust trillions of dollars to that guy?
Is this turning into a shit on founders episode?
Maybe a little bit.
I'm shitting on crypto pros right now.
There is a line of truth with all this. This is something that I personally just haven't understood, especially as we move further into the 21st century, which is that like getting in the gym is something that we were talking about even beforehand in the green screen with me and Will, which is that if going to the gym was easy, everyone would do it and everyone would look fantastic. But I'd argue that because it's hard, that means it's worth doing. Granted, I'm not saying that everything that is difficult to do is worth doing, but I'm saying that this is something that is good for you and is super easy to give off to other people and convey the message that, yeah, look, I have the dedication and the willpower and the discipline to do this to myself. Therefore, that should at least convey the competence and the result pieces of the core of trust, which is that I am showing that I am capable and that I am sticking to a plan. If that says nothing else, it's at least going to get my foot in the door with a lot of opportunities.
I can pay the price.
Yeah, this is why I'm saying I don't understand why so many people have just like let themselves go, especially in professional settings. Like I understand that sometimes your job, like if you're one of those crazy Wall Street traders, like, yeah, your job might be high stress and you might be in the office like 80 hours a week. But at the same time, I think you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck if you at least put in a little bit of time in the gym and get yourself in shape. That's just my 2 cents, though.
Well,
You'll have to excuse me for a second. I'm at Taco Bell.
Thank you for
Sorry, Mrs. McGinn, go for it.
I was just going to say there's also a lot to be said for that when it comes to America specifically, and the kind of food that we have available to us nowadays. We were talking about this the other day. Back, 100, 200 years ago, the norm used to be that the richest people tended to be the heavier people because they got a lot of access to extra. Nowadays, it's actually kind of gone in the reverse direction. Our poorer families tend to be bigger people because of all the junk that they put in cheap food now. Because there's a lot of extra chemicals and whatever else additives and stuff that's in our food nowadays. That just makes a lot of that a lot more difficult. So, I mean, it's just even more important to be aware, just being knowledgeable about those facts. There's not necessarily, a perfectly happy solution every time. It's not like, oh, if I know it, I can just completely avoid it. It's not entirely realistic, if you know what I mean. but it does help at least. And then obviously what you're saying, having that accountability, and the book does go into this quite a bit, because one of the things that kind of touched home with me is creating trust for yourself, trusting yourself. And I think he said something like 80% of Americans create New Year's resolutions, and then like 3% actually do them. And so it's just a really important point to bring up. You know what I mean? That also goes back to his thing of setting up goals that are not crazy. I'm going to drink nothing but water for a whole year. You're setting yourself up for failure. It's like saying, I'm going to quit smoking tomorrow when you've been a chain smoker for the last 10 years of your life. It's just not something that you can reasonably just expect to put on there. And then the more you let yourself down, the more you get used to letting yourself down. And then that just kind of becomes the cycle. And he was talking about something about setting an alarm. I set this alarm for a certain time. And as I set the alarm, I tell myself, I'm not going to get up. It's just habit though. So I'll keep setting the alarm. I'll keep sleeping through it. Finally, he made a change and said, let me ask myself the night before, am I going to get up at this time? No? Not going to set the alarm then. Yes? Okay, let's set the alarm, and I'm getting up at that time no matter what. No excuses. Don't care what time I went to bed. That's when I'm getting up.
Yeah, that was a great part of the self-trust chapter, which is that I know a lot of people don't exactly think about trusting themselves necessarily, but that's a perfect example of like, you may even be willing to like put some of a plan in place, but unless you actually have intention behind that plan, unless you ask yourself the night before, am I actually getting up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym? Odds are you're just hitting snooze on that alarm. So
yeah, exactly. And a lot of people have a mentality of just making excuses nowadays because they've gotten so used to it. Oh, I'm going to go and buy a gym pass. I feel better now that I have a gym pass. I'm never going to go to the gym. But I have a gym pass. I put in effort. I'm paying money for something. Kudos to me. And it's like, what are you doing? You're throwing money away.
Yeah, it's like a half-ass solution makes you feel like it's a full solution, or makes a lot of people feel that way, and it just like it robs them of the experience that is like truly changing their lives for the better, for the worse, or whatever.
For sure. All right, well, gang, we are coming towards the end of our stream. I'm going to attempt to land the plane here and do my final pitch of why I think this book is important for not just the DGen Roundtable team, so that I think we can be a better team altogether, but for the crypto space as a whole. Crypto is unfortunately truly rife with scammers, fraudsters, and hucksters and con artists, and there's a lot of bad projects out there. However, really contemplating trust is going to be one of the keys to help you determine the good projects from the bad projects. I think this even goes into how we do qualitative analysis. If you're part of the crypto mindset course, Miguel talks about the box. You got to look at the 4 things. The first is community, product market fit, the founders, and then what was the last one?
It was a team, right?
Team, I think
Tokenomics.
So. Tokenomics, thank you.
Tokenomics.
So what that really is it's you're looking at the founders. Are these founders trustworthy? Do they have a track record? Is this community trustworthy? Do they have a track record as well? And then product market fit, that's competence. It's saying, is this thing actually have the ability to do what it claims to do? And then back to the team, that's results in competence and intent and integrity. You got to believe that these people are trying to do what they're saying to do. And at the same time, you are yourself extending trust to the projects that you back when you fork over your hard-earned cash for it. Because if you want to go to that crazy analogy of you effectively trade your life force for dollars, so you're effectively trading your life force for other people's project parts of it. So really
trading
think about
time for dollars.
Exactly, correct. So the idea is, I think that there's a lot of room for the crypto community to grow as a whole when it comes to being trustworthy and extending trust to each other, but also doing it in smart ways and doing what the book talks about, which is analyze. Have high trust, high analysis. That's the way to really maximize your ability to operate in an environment where you're not being taxed for not trusting each other, but you're actually receiving benefits for it. So I know I obviously don't speak for the entire team here, but the DGen Roundtable as a whole, we want to try to be as trustworthy as we possibly can so that we build the best community and we get our community involved in the best projects so that we can all have the best lives. the intent out here is that we're not trying to turn $1 off of you based on your viewership or your membership or whatever. We'll talk about this more on Sunday, but the idea is that even if there is a paywall in the future, the goal is not to try to like make revenue. The goal is to try to make the community better by providing people an opportunity to back us so that we can continue to do good work for you guys, and also create that barrier to entry to prevent all the negative aspects of the unfortunate negative aspects of the crypto community. So from me to our audience and to the team, I do personally want to try to work on fulfilling the stuff that I talked about. I know personally that's one of the things that in the past I've been a bit of an overpromiser, and I want to make sure that if I say I'm going to show up, I show up. If I say I'm going to do something, I do something. And I hope that I've been at least demonstrating a little bit through the book club and the regular appearances and everything else that's going on behind the scenes, but that's what I'm at. I think that we have an awesome opportunity to grow here. And I think at the core of it, having trust, and I promise that we're not just name dropping RG3 for clout, but as an honest, genuine thank you for putting us onto this, because I hope that he believes in us. I hope that we believe in ourselves, and we want to give him all the thank you that we can for the amount of rub that he's given us already, and his time and the opportunities to hang out on his channel and in person. And honestly, he's been a great mentor to the channel so far. So that's my 2 cents. Anybody
Subscribe to him. Subscribe.
Absolutely go subscribe to the Discord Syndicate.
Discord Syndicate, yeah. Chatting with the captain. Go chat with the captain, man. Look, go on, get in there.
Good stuff, man. Das Bomb streams over there occasionally. He's starting up a Hex incubator, which is basically like Hexicans getting together and doing stuff. It's pretty cool. They got a great channel over there.
The TLDR for everybody that just skipped the rant was, we are trying to build a trustless environment, but we honestly could use some good, trustworthy people to make sure that it works well. And that's what we're trying to be. All right, panel, I'm going to toss it over to you guys. What do you have to say before we get out of here? Any epiphanies? Where can people find you? What are you doing? How's the Taco Bell? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. To follow up with what you said, we originally created this group, this channel, you know, the chats and everything. We originally created it because of what we were originally doing together when we were not the DJ Roundtable, and that was people are asking questions, people are panicking, people don't know what to do, and we were helping. We want to try and save as many as possible, right? And so we thought to ourselves, well, why don't we create this whole DGen Roundtable thing, and we will help as many people as possible. And that was the entire point. And that is very clear intentions, and that is not going away anytime soon. And I know that that's my intentions 100%, because I went through way too many years and lost way too much money myself. I went through that fire, and I don't want anybody else to, if I can help them. So that's my deal. Tuesday, I got my show coming in, the end of crypto. Yeah, so it's gonna be a fun one. I got everything set up. The one and only thing I don't have is like an intro. I don't know how I want to do like an intro. Am I gonna do it kind of like DJ Roundtable style here, or like maybe just some music, or I don't know. So creative things. I'll as my show goes on, you know, I'll evolve that. But for now, I'm not gonna have anything. Actually, I do have an idea. Maybe I'll try that out. But yeah, so it's gonna be a lot of fun. I encourage you to show up. Just simply, this is more so not like crypto related, but well, this particular show actually will be crypto related. But in future shows, it's not necessarily going to be crypto related. And the idea is simply, hey, put some ideas out there, some very thought-provoking ideas. Let's talk about them. Let's have a good time. And yeah, I mean, Will, what you got going on?
Oh man, I got the same thing going on as I always got going on, but for the folks at home who are watching this right now or on the replay or whatever, I am still trying to meet up with other Hexicans all over the place. Right now I'm in Texas. I met with one so far. So if you guys are close to wherever I'm at, it says so right down there in the little chat box, like what city I'm nearby. But if you're somewhere in Texas, reach out to me on Instagram, Telegram, Twitter. Telegram's probably the best one. That's the easiest one. If you really want to go to Facebook and reach out to me, you can do that. All the links to do all that stuff is down in the description below. Also, make sure you guys join our Telegram, join the DGen Roundtable, get that in there. Go to bit.ly/degenerate_roundtable, and then you can be part of our community. Join our Telegram. Right now it's free, so come on over. The water's fine, and we're all just getting smarter and stronger and better every day. Also, I have my brother and I host a podcast called Brothers Two of Them, and on the 20th of December at I can't remember the time of day, but on the 20th, I'll remind you guys before then, we'll be interviewing a lovely Australian woman, and we'll be talking about promiscuity and boss babe lifestyle and how it affects people and how it affects relationships and things. So we'll have a nice little 3-person discussion on that. Two American dudes and 1 Australian lady. We'll chat about that. Also next week, Zenith and I, as well as Josh and Jeff, are going to be interviewing Stephen Bates, the author of the cryptocurrency book Securing Wallets. So I highly recommend you guys go. Oh shit, you got a physical copy. I like it.
You boys
It's the
got
order of books.
I highly recommend you guys check this book out. It's got a lot of great knowledge if you're new to the space and you don't know much about cybersecurity, or you don't know much about cold wallets versus hot wallets, or attack vectors, or ways that people can come at you to take your money, or mistakes that might happen that might take your money away from you, right? It's just good to have a background information of all this knowledge and stuff. So I highly encourage you guys to read that book. But anyways, myself and Zenith will be chatting with him next Wednesday, the 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern. We pretty much do all of our shows at 8 p.m. Eastern, but that's what I got going on.
Hey, Will, I got a question for you.
Yes.
So this lovely lady that you've gotten, that wouldn't happen to have been a gift from a certain sniper that we know, would it have?
Not that I know. Oh yeah, I guess Sniper is Australian. Nah, this is actually, my brother did all the legwork for this interview, so he was also chatting on Threads, and this lady and him were having a very good conversation about stuff, and so he was like, "Hey, would you like to, record a podcast about your thoughts, and like we could talk about it for the whole world to see and stuff?" And she was like, "Yeah, sure, that'd be lovely." So that was all. It was all my brother's doing. The big shout out to Sniper. He's a true fan. I love that dude. He's always in the chats. He's always in the channel, posting up the links, watching the replays, and keeping everyone in the community engaged. So we quite like Sniper over in our DGen Roundtable community. One more reason for you guys to join our Telegram is so that way you can interact with Sniper. He's a great guy, super cool Aussie. We got a couple Aussies in the chat. I think a couple Australians. Some dudes over in like New Zealand and dudes all over the place. But anyways, oh yeah, shit. So if you're a Hexican and you want to meet up with other Hexicans, I never dropped the link for that. If you're a Hexican, you want to meet up with other dudes, what you can do is you can go to bit.ly/hex_meetup_template. And what you'll find there is an Excel spreadsheet, and that will basically take you to like a Google Excel sheet. And you can just put in, if you would like to meet up with other Hexicans, you can look around, and people have doxed themselves on this thing. Like it was sort of kind of soft docs. They basically put up their Telegram handle or their Instagram or their Twitter or whatever. And they like wrote down like the area of the country that they live in or the city or whatever. So if you're in the same city as some other people and you want to meet up with some cool crypto bros that, watch the DGen Roundtable or other things that we are featured on, then you can find them on that Excel spreadsheet. And at some point, I'm going to transition that link to forward to a website or a Telegram group or something like that. I'll make it better than just an Excel spreadsheet, but I got a lot on my plate. So that's what it is right now. That is my 80% solution. So if you want to meet a Hexican, again, the URL is bit.ly/hex_meetup_template. And that's how you can find other Hexicans. And that's all I got going on for me.
Fantastic. We're going to throw it over to our always esteemed third member of the panel, Mrs. McGettit. Thank you for braving through the rough voice. We hope you feel better very soon. Any final thoughts?
Thank you. It's been very frustrating, but I think we're almost back to normal. And in 2 weeks, I think we'll definitely be good by then. So
Fantastic.
The only thing I really wanted to add in kind of for final thoughts here is read the books that we're talking about, guys. If you, I mean, most of these you can find on audiobook. The first 3 were all on YouTube for free. So there's no reason not to, especially for those. This one was harder to find. We had to buy it off of Audible. Actually, I think Nate got a free trial again. So we got it free technically, but still. If you have the time, read the dang books. If you don't have the time, make the time. They will help you. And this one especially was a really, really good one for everything that we've been talking about. I mean, all of them are great. That's just, that's why we have them. That's why we talk about them. But yeah, that's really it for me.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Yes, to reiterate what Mrs. McGinnis was saying is the books that we try to pick are either community driven or we think that these are very relevant to what's going on in the crypto space or just personal finance, investment, or betterment. So that's why we pick them, or I at least try to recommend them and then let everyone else agree that it's either a good one or a bad one. So we'll see. But I do have to give a massive thank you again to RG3. This was an excellent book. It talked about all the stuff he said it was going to talk about, so he lived up to his word, and this was honestly a bit of a dark horse winner for me, which was I was not expecting it to be as good as it is, but it was great start to finish for me. I had an 8-hour drive, and it filled up all of it and was great. So that's all I got to say. As far as me, you can find me, Zenith, on Twitter at Hex Space Force, YouTube and Instagram at Hexagon Space Force. I'm actually getting to go on vacation. This is exciting. I'm going back to Colorado to visit my family this weekend. I am doing a little bit of work during that time. Tomorrow, Boogie asked me to come on the stream and hang out. We're going to do that, hopefully, and chat. So look for me over on the US Crypto Boogie channel tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central Time, which should be 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So 1 hour later than when we do our show. That's what I'm up to. I will not be on Sunday's show. However, the usual DGen Roundtable show on Sunday is going to be going off at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, as always. We got an exciting cast. I think Crypto Sloth is actually going to show us how to create our own meme coin and then pump and dump it on live stream to show you guys how these things are very manipulatable, whatever.
Manipulatable, yeah. Dude, he freaking created a coin called One of One with a singular coin, and he had like three of his wallets bounce it back and forth for a couple of cents, and it went from 50 cents to $4.5 million worth in like an hour.
Yeah, but the other half of that story is that it also crashed back down to about like 3 cents afterwards as well. I think he was very inspired by what was our last book? Reminiscence of a Stock Operator. He wanted to get rich and go broke repeatedly, so he had the opportunity to lose millions of dollars in a day.
And this is an important lesson in that it doesn't matter what the market cap is, the liquidity matters. Okay, never mind. Market cap does matter, but liquidity matters more.
Liquidity is very important, yes.
If there ain't no one to dump those millions of dollars on, then your one token that's worth millions of dollars can't get out. So
for sure.
That was all I had.
Awesome. As Will mentioned, we are talking to a guest on Wednesday for securing wallets. He did write this book. I haven't read it yet, so I couldn't tell you if it's good or not, but I'll tell you this, it looks pretty thin, and I am okay with that because I don't read very fast. After that, the next book club is going to be How to Avoid Trouble with the IRS, written by Christine Stevenson, aka Will's mom. We promise it's not nepotism. This is an actual good book. She is an IRS agent and actively helps people with their small businesses avoid trouble with daddy government. So this is going to be a fantastic one. This is also our segue or lead-in to the guest episode where she will be gracing us with her presence and her time. And I'm looking forward to chatting with her. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be a good one, boys and girls.
For sure. That is our docket for book club for the next 2 weeks, effectively. After that, we are back open for suggestions or recommendations. If nothing happens, I'm telling you right now, it's probably going to be The Millionaire Next Door. I think that's a book that's been on my list for book club for a hot minute, and I think it's very relevant. In case you want to go ahead and read it already, it talks about what does an actual millionaire look like and some of the psychology that comes with how you acquire your money is going to determine how you react to money with it. So hopefully that will help you all. It definitely provided an interesting retrospect for me. All right, we are 2 hours and 9 minutes into this, so we are going to sign off. As always, thank you so much for watching. We do genuinely appreciate your time and that you choose to spend it with us. And I hope that we provide something for you, because you definitely provide us with a lot of entertainment in the chat and in our Telegram, which we hope to see you in. Until next time, this has been the DGen Roundtable Book Club. Thank you.